Go home, go hard, go home. Touchdown like the end zone. When the circle turn to my home, can't get me out of my zone. Go hard, go home, go hard, go home. Yeah, these are championship rings on my hands now. In my head I'm top 10, yeah, that's hands down. You a squad, now you're looking man down. Funny how foes turn to friends now. Drive a race car like a Atari now. Call filling up, I need product again. Treat the business like a playground, might slide on you. Don't even might slide on you. Do a backflip, cause I'm mad rich. I'm the definition of what that is. Go hard, go home, go hard, go home, go hard, go hard, go home. Touchdown like the end zone. When the circle turn to my home, can't get me out of my zone. Go hard, go home.
What is up? What is up? What is up? It is your boy Tim Wayne and myself, the Uncle Gandhi Harish Nukala, presented here to you by the number 3 Texas Longhorns and the Texas Longhorn Fan Battle Network.
Yes, sir.
How you doing tonight, Tim?
I'm good. I'm a little. I would say I'm a little worried, but
worried for what?
I got faith. We'll talk about it coming up here, but
I just want to throw this out there real quick, and for those of you guys that are listening over the interweb feeds. You don't know this yet, but Tim is wearing the wrong colors for the show.
I am. I definitely am.
And he's wearing the colors of a team. It's not looking like they're going to the playoffs.
No.
So I just want to throw that out there. I mean, it has nothing to do with Texas Longhorns, so I should make sure we throw it out there. But
you just got to throw a little jab in there, huh?
Hey, I mean, we would imagine numbers 2 for us. We can win our first division title in 200 years. So I'm really excited as a Rangers fan.
You're not going to make it past the first round of playoffs.
I mean, at least we get there, right? Can't say that as a Red Sox fan.
We've been to the playoffs way more and had way more success than you have in the last 4 or 5 years, brother.
That's awesome, man. I'm proud of you. What is that? What have you done today, Tim? What have you done today?
Man, I'm not worried about – let me tell you something. I am not worried about my Red Sox. What I'm more worried about is what's going to happen this week.
That's what
Are
we're
you going to fall for the rat poison?
Well, let's find out. But hey, before we get started, get and dive into all the fun. Of course, we are the Texas Longhorn Fan Battle Podcast,
Right.
brought to you by FanBattleSports.com, where you can go and get all of your findings for the ASC South, including all the other 1 and 2 teams inside of the division, and of course your division leaders, the 2-1 Indianapolis Colts, because the Jaguars still cannot figure out how to have back.
Oh man.
Yeah, go to fanbattlesports.com. Give us a follow, read some articles. Got lots of articles up there. Tim and I still don't have an article up there. We need to fix that. There's a lot going on.
It really
lots to write about, but we'll fix that one day in life. But that's just not today. On the flip side of it, follow us on Twitter, LH Fan Battle. We are up to 120.
120. Yes, sir.
So give us a follow. Trying to grow that channel there. Give us a follow, comment, like, subscribe, or like stuff. And of course, while you're at it, follow us on YouTube at LH Fan Battle as well. And like, subscribe, comment on the video here. Glad to have you guys. Texas is having a phenomenal season. As a Texas Longhorn fan, Tim, and before we get started, as a Texas Longhorn fan, I want you to fill in the blank. This season, on a scale of 1 to 10, so far this season, how are you feeling?
If we were to put it on if we were putting it on are we doing it like a grade scale? We doing 1 to 10? Like what we doing?
Yeah, scale of 1 to 10.
Scale of 1 to 10. I'm saying how I feel is about. I would say we're at a good 8. We're at a good 8.
Okay.
We're at a good 8.
Your hype meter for yourself is at an 8. That's
right.
Pretty solid hype meter.
Right. And here's why. Because of course, like I said, prior to the Wyoming game, you just got to really stay the course. You have to make sure that you do that you stay that you continue to fix and work and improve on what you already know in order to continue to get ready for the next week. So you have to execute. And there were some times we've seen some times within the last couple of weeks where execution wasn't necessarily the greatest, but we've still managed to get out the win, perform and do what we need to do best. Close games. That's one thing that I've been really, really happy about. That's why my excitement meter is so high, because we've seen these guys come in and close out games like they should.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with that. I think I'm at an 8 as well. I think that's pretty fair.
Right.
The only thing that's preventing me from being a 10 right now.
Okay.
Is obviously seeing what happens this week and next.
Okay.
Listen, if we can go into the bye week, right? Because we were the football guys blessed us this year, and they said, hey, after OU, we know the Big 12 hates you, but after OU, we'll give you a bye week. The football gods blessed us with that.
Right.
And we really appreciate them for that. So
right. Absolutely.
If we can get past this week and next week and go into the bye week, I'm very confident in the rest of the schedule. And the rest of the schedule is it's actually it actually turned out that the rest of the schedule is a bunch of cupcakes. After the bye week. So real quick, you have Houston.
Okay.
Too new to the conference, they suck. BYU, I think BYU is a fraud. Kansas State's a fraud. TCU's a fraud. Iowa State sucks. They're still gambling probably at the casino tonight. And Texas Tech can't even beat Wyoming. So there's not a single team on the schedule after Red River I'm worried about. If they can get Red River, this season's going to be unreal.
Listen, I get what you're saying. I appreciate the confidence that you have within the team, but
the poison's there. It's too far.
Those teams that you're referring to and you're talking about are going to give Texas everything that they have.
I applaud them for trying to do so.
I still think Tech. I still think Tech can be a formidable opponent. They did give Oregon, who blasted Colorado, an absolute shot in the face. Oh yeah, Oregon, who gave Colorado a shot in the face. They're still capable of playing up to par.
100%.
You got Kansas State. I don't necessarily know what's going on with them. They have two quarterback situations going on. You know the rule. If you have two quarterbacks, you have none unless you're Urban Meyer. That's a real tricky situation. And then TCU, I don't really know what's going on with TCU. TCU looks
they caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, they don't. You could tell that they're missing their talent there, and it's gonna take them a little bit of time to get those new guys in, get them acclimated to the system, and get them back up and running. So, TCU, Tech, Kansas State, you still have to look at those opponents, and you still have to be wary of those opponents.
Wary that you're gonna blow them out. All right. Anyway, moving on.
Oh my God.
So let's talk about the beginning of the Big 12 farewell tour. Ended emphatically, right? Resounding win, 38-6. Texas beats Baylor. Quinn Ewers actually looked pretty good in this game, and Tim, I told you at the beginning of the season, there is one guy in this running back room that's going to get an opportunity, and he's going to shine. And that guy is Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks killed it last week. 18 carries, 106 yards, 5.5. Still averaging. I think this is it maybe still the guy? He's averaging still above 8 yards a carry for the season.
Jonathan Brooks?
Yeah.
I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it is higher than the national average.
Let me see. There's a crazy stat about Jonathan Brooks and his career average carry per yards per carry. There's something crazy about this. He's averaging 7 yards per carry 2 years ago, 7 last year. He's averaging 6 yards per carry. So he's probably averaging about anywhere from 6.5 to 7 yards per carry for his career at Texas.
Right. That's really, really good. That's
insane.
That goes to show how good that offensive line is. That goes to show how good of a running back he is.
Yeah.
Listen, I've been on the Cedric Baxter train, CB4 to be exact. But I can't knock Jonathan Brooks. He looks great. I think I tweeted last week during the game. He had some crazy run. I want to say it was an off. It might have been like some
off
tackle to the right. He scampers for about 50 yards, maybe. And I was like, that is the starting Texas. That is the starting running back for the Texas Longhorns.
I told you, man.
He looks fantastic.
There's nothing against CJ Baxter. I think CJ Baxter's going to be
phenomenal. He's young.
He's young. He's got a couple injury issues. And again, this running back room is deep. And so I think the other thing that you give credit to Jonathan Brooks for is taking advantage of the opportunity that he's been given.
Absolutely.
He was not the starter. CJ Baxter is Sark's guy, right?
Right.
That is the guy Sark wants. That is the guy Sark went and got. Mm-hmm. That is his guy. And he will continue to have the ability to be that guy moving forward.
Absolutely.
But Sark is a smart guy, and he knows how to ride the hot hand.
Right.
So, but yeah.
So this is what I will say between Brooks and Baxter. So that sounds like a law firm. Brooks and Baxter.
It does. I think there's something close. Isn't there like there's something Bros or something like that. Law firm somewhere in Austin, I'm sure.
Anyway. So it just in the running styles, Brooks is a little bit more shiftier. Baxter seems to be more of a downhill runner. I think again, Sark's offense has been it has been told over the years that Sark's offense is not the easiest to necessarily learn because there's so many different formations. There's so many different wordage that come out of the same formation. You could have three plays coming out of the same formation. Mac Jones has talked about it. Devonta Smith has talked about it. Just players in general. Tua has talked about it. And when you have something like that the verbiage and understanding who to block and what your responsibilities are within that offensive playbook can be somewhat intimidating. So I think Brooks, being that he's been with Sark a little bit longer, has a better understanding of the offensive playbook and what his roles are. You can definitely kind of see that. And honestly, to piggyback off what you're saying, is like taking advantage of the opportunity that you have, right?
Exactly.
He's definitely taking advantage of the opportunity to start. That was one of our biggest, as we talked before the season started, that was definitely one of our concerns. It's like, who's going to start at running back? Because the running back, even though it is full of talent, there was no clear-cut running back at the start of the season. So, you had running backs coming in different packages and different things. But now it definitely seems like, and it's crazy because this is week what, 4, 5?
5. We're in week 5.
This is week 5 coming on, and now you have, okay, now we know what we want to do with this particular running back. Now we can insert him in the starting lineup. That's a great thing to have. Most people don't, they have an idea, but it doesn't necessarily work out for them. So they're going back to the drawing board. In this case, in Texas's eyes, it's kind of working the other way around, where you don't necessarily know you got all this talent. You're just waiting for this talent to come through and shine. And Brooks has definitely done that over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the other thing is, and you kind of touched on it, right? We had so many talented backs.
Right.
Sark talks a lot about how his offense predicates off the run.
Right.
And how he will always use the run to set up the pass and not use the pass to set up the run. He talks about it all the time. It's his philosophy. It's how he thinks. Yes, he's an excellent play designer. We all know that. He does really, really well with moving guys in motion, getting guys in the right space, and then getting those guys, his athletes, the ball in space. But he talks all about setting up the run to create the pass.
Right.
And there's a reason why he has 1,000-yard backs every single year, because that's how he runs his offense.
Right.
So Jonathan Brooks is definitely on his way. One guy I really want to talk about next, and I want to get your thoughts, is who probably, I don't know anybody else that looks as phenomenal as this guy on the offensive end. But I think he's the favorite for the John Mackey right now.
Okay.
And that's Jatavian Sanders.
Yeah, he's starting to set himself apart.
And you know what? I think he's starting to set himself apart. And I think he's starting to set himself apart in a way that it's not even close. 5 receptions, 110 yards, 22 yards per catch last week, a touchdown. Talk to me about what you're seeing differently, because historically, right? The other thing we always used to hear about Sark's offense, and I think something that he's matured in and grown into, is that he doesn't use his tight ends often.
Right.
And that is the exact opposite with Jatavian Sanders. Not only is he using Jatavian Sanders, he's putting Jatavian Sanders in different places purposely so that he can use him.
Right.
What are you seeing on the field that's allowing Jatavian Sanders so much success?
So what I'm seeing is that he's basically getting schemed open.
Right.
When you're getting schemed open, you have to be a specific, especially at the tight end position. You just don't get too many people, or you don't get too many tight ends in the league or in college football where they are feeding you the ball as if you're like an actual wide receiver, right? So you think of Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is somebody that was really special. You think of Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was somebody that was really, really special. Outside of those tight ends within the last 2 to 3 years, you really weren't hearing big name tight ends like that.
Right.
Now you had phenomenal blocking tight ends that have come out of nowhere. However, just tight ends that can do all of it. They can block, they can get open. I want to say that receiver, that tight end from Michigan, I forget his name. He actually got drafted by the Cowboys.
This last season?
Yeah.
Okay.
I forget his name.
Okay.
I forget his name. But when you think of Jatavian Sanders, you have to really, really pay attention to him, and it makes him so. That is one of the great things about having talent just all over the place.
Right.
You have to pick your poison. So if you're going to double Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell on the outsides, you got to worry about Jatavian Sanders. Jatavian Sanders is 6'4", 6'5", 240.
Jatavian Sanders is 6'4", 243.
240. So basically, he's a defensive end running around catching the ball. He's quick. He can catch. He has a catch radius that's really, really big. And for you guys that don't necessarily know what a catch radius is basically he's able to catch basically anywhere close to his body in arm's length. He can catch anywhere. He can torque his body. We've seen him do it. He's got speed. So you have to account for him. And I think because Sark has been able to just kind of spread defenses out, Jatavian can just kind of get in and not necessarily run a specific route, but it looks like he's got more of an option route, right? Where he's able to start off, you may run, let's say you run a 10 and in, right? A basic 10 and in. Yeah. You go 10 and in. If a linebacker is sitting there in that 10 and in, he may have the option to run a 9 instead of keeping it there. So that way you get past that linebacker. Oh, Quinn knows that, hey, if this guy is not in at the 10 and in, like I could possibly look a safety off. Bang, I'm gonna hit you over the head. I'm gonna loft it over this linebacker, and now you got a 30-yard reception on 3rd and 3.
Right.
Now we're talking about we're going from the 40, your own 40. We're pushing. We're in our own territory here on a short down. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just so much. You got to think about also like even from a run pass option concept, like Jatavian Sanders is going to eat you up. You can't only account for the running back and the wide receivers. That tight end is just as good. And honestly, at times, Jatavian Sanders is looked as the best player on the field.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think it goes to the point of like, you mentioned it earlier, Xavier Worthy is the best player on the field, right? But it's Xavier, because defenses know this, they're doubling him all the time. So what we're seeing is, again, Sark scheming people open. Those guys taking advantage of the opportunities that they're given. Jatavian Sanders probably almost all the time is one-on-one, somebody that can guard him. Whether that be a linebacker, a safety, a smaller defensive back. And we'll talk about this later, the one thing I'm very interested in is in this Kansas matchup is how they talk about how physical the DBs are and how much bigger they are and how lengthier they are. I'm very curious to see how they attack these wide receivers and Jatavian Sanders and what kind of different things they do, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, anyway, I think that goes to show the matchup nightmares that can be proposed, not just because Jatavian Sanders is out there, but it's the fact that he's out there and he's making plays that make it even worse, because now you're truly having to pick your poison. A.D. Mitchell over the top. Jatavian Sanders is producing. Gunnar Helm was good last week. I don't know if he gets 2 receptions, 37 yards, 18.5 points per carry. And the deep ball hit again. A lot of people didn't talk about this. The deep ball hit again to Jonte Cook for 51 yards. Yeah. That was a just seam route straight down the middle.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything special. Jonte Cook in the slot, just a little seam route.
Worthy had a big play too. He had a couple of them. Yeah.
And Quinn hit Jonte Cook right on the money.
Yeah.
It was
Looks
a
good.
beautiful throw. It was a good throw. So anyway, Baylor sucks. The other thing is the defensive line continues to perform. I believe 4 sacks on the quarterback this week.
Absolutely.
Sawyer Robertson gets hurt. And then PJ Martinez, who's the transfer from wherever the hell he came from, comes in. RJ Martinez, the transfer comes in. He does okay. The defensive line continues to be a story for this team.
Absolutely.
And they continue to push the needle. I'm taking a look here just real quick. 5 sacks on the quarterback last week. Jalen Ford does his normal Jalen Ford thing.
Always
tackles,
around the ball.
I think he had a pick as well. Yep. Yeah, Jalen Ford always in the right place, the right time, every single time.
Every time.
Every time.
I don't know what it is. I absolutely love it, but he is always around that ball.
Right. And that's good. Again, those types of linebackers exist in the NFL now.
Right.
I'm part of a support a team that has a linebacker just like Jalen Ford. Shaq Leonard has always happened to be around the ball, the right place, the right time, every single time. Either forces a fumble, gets a pick. It's valuable in the league, especially when you talk about how much versatile the offensive weapons are in there. So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
So to have something to combat that is very interesting. Calvin, what's up, man? Glad you joined us. Biggest trap game. We're actually going to talk about the biggest trap game here in a second.
Yep.
Anything else you want to mention from game 1 of the revenge tour?
One thing I did like. Okay, so one thing I did like about, or I have liked about the last 2 games. I'll throw in the last 2 games. Is it seems to me that there's no how the coverage is, like they're like, oh, can Alabama pull this off, or they're down 10, or it's a close game.
Yeah.
The fact that there doesn't seem to be any panic anywhere.
Yeah.
Like if you just look at the sideline, because I look at stuff like this. I look at when they pan the Sark, when they pan over the coaches, nobody seems to be worried. And that is a good thing. That means that they have confidence within themselves that they can put the points on the board as fast as possible. We've seen it last week, prior to the Baylor game, when they play Wyoming. We've seen that.
Yeah.
We've seen them hang up 20 points, 30 points. Now, do you want to always have to do that? Absolutely not. But the fact that you're able to, I don't want to say hit the proverbial switch, like turn it on, but you are confident within yourself as a team to know, like, hey, we're not out of this. We can score these points, we can win, and we can win in a pretty big fashion. Because if you just look at paper and you're not watching these games, you're just looking at paper, you'd be like, oh, Texas handled up.
Yeah.
You keep it moving. You're not gonna nitpick, like we're die fans, right? So we're gonna nitpick. We're gonna look through the each play, and we're gonna look at, oh, he did this, he missed this, he missed that. From a from a media standpoint, oh, they handle business, and that's really impressive.
Yeah. The real quick, just Texas is ranked 3rd in the country right now. They've been ranked 3rd in the country for a couple weeks now. Based on who the other 2 teams have played, is Texas the number 1 team in the country?
Yeah, to me.
Right.
Okay. I'm not gonna say number 1. Let me not be a homer. I'll say Texas is ranked number 2.
Why?
Based on the opponents that they've played. Again, you've had to watch a Wyoming team that beat Texas Tech, which was at one point in time favored to be Texas' opponent outside of Oklahoma to be in the Big 12 championship. Then you have an Alabama. Granted, yes, Alabama does not necessarily look that great, but you can see that they are getting better. They're improving. And I would just say with the with the amount of, or with the opponents just alone in which they played, yeah, like Rice isn't necessarily they're not winning a national championship anytime soon, but they're not just cupcakes either. They're doing pretty well for themselves in their conference. So I would say just based on what they played, yes, Texas is number 2. The only reason why I would say I would switch Florida State and Texas is because we all know about rivalry games. Texas versus Florida State versus Clemson. That's definitely a big rivalry game. But Clemson found something within Florida State that I don't know if it can be fixed anytime soon. They're about to go through hell. Florida State has a pretty nasty schedule coming up, and I know that they're going to win, but they're playing against teams that are capable of beating them. And so I'm looking at that, and I'm just kind of looking at where's the chink in the armor for Texas. And the only thing that I could think of is really just not putting the ball in the end zone. That's really it. Red zone efficiency, they don't have the greatest red zone efficiency.
I think they're actually one of the best in the country red zone efficiency.
As far as scoring touchdowns or kicking field goals,
I think just scoring in general. I think
scoring is scoring, right?
Right.
But we want the balls in the end zone.
Sure.
Well, and even if we don't even have to go to red zone efficiency. Let's just talk about drops. Let's talk about drops. The drops, man. Our opportunities.
Texas, so Texas also is second in the nation in drop percentage. Heading into last week, the receivers were good.
Looked great, but we've had prior to that, we've had 2 weeks of where they dropped a lot of major balls that could have proverbially put games away. So we don't even have to talk about red zone. We can just talk about the drops. I think that's one of the main things. Yeah. Other than that, I don't see a real weakness in it. We know that their run game is really good now. We know that the defensive run game is really good. The passing is, you don't really get too many passes off.
Yeah.
So there you have it. And the only reason why I'm giving Georgia number 1 is because they won the national championship the last 2 years in a row.
Okay. So nothing tangible you can say that Georgia should be number 1.
Georgia has struggled the last 2.5 weeks or 2 weeks.
This is who Georgia's played this season: UT Martin, Ball State, and UAB.
And they struggled the last 2 weeks. I'm not taking any. The only reason why they're number 1 is because they're currently the national champions.
Yeah,
the reigning national champion.
Yeah, this is why I hate AP polls, because
by the way, guys, none of this matters. These polls,
it doesn't matter at all. The rankings don't matter until after the weekend. Right. Rankings don't start mattering until week 8, which is after the OU game. And if Texas gets past these next 2 weeks, they'll be ranked the number 1 team in that first playoff bowl. I guarantee it. If they beat Kansas, they beat Oklahoma, and they head into the bye week undefeated, I think the first playoff poll, Texas will be the number 1 ranked team in the nation.
Absolutely.
And that would be crazy.
Absolutely.
That'll be
I agree.
But even just looking at the AP poll, regardless of how much it matters or not, I think Texas is the best team in the country. And you can call me Homer, you can call me whatever you want.
No. I'm not knocking.
No. I'm just saying, there's nothing that I've seen from Michigan or Georgia that I'm like, dang, that's a damn good Michigan team. Dang. That Georgia team, Carson Beck, is not better than Quinn Ewers. I'm sorry. There's nobody that they've played that's like, dude, Georgia, they really gave it to South Carolina, and they didn't.
I'm very interested to see how, because a lot of these guys, like you said, like the Georgia schedule has not necessarily been the greatest. Now, let me ask you a question before we move on here. Do you think Georgia goes undefeated in SEC play?
Let's see. So let's just look at this real quick, right? They play Auburn, that's a W. Kentucky, W. Vanderbilt, W. There's one game on here that I'm not saying that they'll lose, but it's kind of like this Kansas Texas game is Missouri Georgia.
Ooh,
That
okay.
game all of a sudden has become interesting. That's not until the beginning of it's a month from now, right? Beginning of
Right.
November. I think that game just all of a sudden has become interesting,
Mhm.
especially if Carson Beck doesn't continue to develop and improve. If
Right.
Carson Beck is average like he is today, I could see Missouri beating Georgia and Georgia. Because that Missouri team is good. That is
Yeah, that
not
Missouri
a
team
bad.
is very,
That
very
is not a
scrappy.
bad Missouri team. Like
Yeah, they are resilient.
yeah,
I can
they
see.
well outside of outside of a couple mistakes, they were pretty much perfect versus Kansas State.
In a penalty-ridden game.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's the one. And then Florida all of a sudden becomes interesting. But then you look at Florida, it's like, well, is it that they are starting to get it together, or is Tennessee just bad?
right.
So I think there's still some questions there. I don't really think we know. Michigan has a cupcake schedule. They basically play Northwest University, high school university every week. So
Right.
they don't play anybody. Their toughest game the rest of the year. Well, actually, you know what? 2 of the last 3 games are tough. They go to Penn State, uh,
Mhm.
and then obviously the big game.
Ohio
Right?
State. Right.
So they don't really get tested to the end of the year. So we'll see. But
Right.
anyway, this isn't about Michigan or Georgia. Nobody cares about them here. Just curious. But real quick, and I don't want to go on this one really quick, but I just kind of like thought about this last couple weeks ago. We were talking about Sark and how he just doesn't make excuses and how he coaches the guys that he's given and he's developed this team very well. Before Sark got here, the things that you just normally hear from coaches when they get here is like, oh yeah, we're doing okay. I just need to make sure I get my guys here, and then we can do well. I don't know if you know this, but do you know the one coach that absolutely hates that excuse?
Who's that?
Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer hated when coaches say that. He hated
Yeah. Yeah.
when Tom
Yeah.
Herman said it. When Tom Herman said it, and Tom Herman came from his tree, he blasted Tom Herman for it because Tom
Yeah.
Herman came in and was like, I think he
I
said
remember that.
something along the lines of like saying, "Oh, the guys that we have in here are soft. We gotta beef them up and this militaristic style that he used to coach with, and he got absolutely blasted by Urban Meyer. But Sark never did that.
Right.
So I don't want it to go too deep in this because we kind of talked about it already. But give
Right.
me one player on the team that is from the Tom Herman era that you're like, dude, that guy sucks, right? Like that guy's terrible. He should never see a field. And now under Sark, he's performing at a very high level.
Okay. I wouldn't say that this is the guy that I'm gonna say absolutely sucked. It was just that this was another guy that got an opportunity to get in, and he's been going since he's been moving since then. So mine is Jade Barron.
Yeah.
He started in 2020. He came in. He really didn't have much. He was kind of a rotational player. I don't remember him starting much. And then from that point on, from 2021 to now, he's completely like flipped the script. He's
Yeah.
had over 50 solo tackles since then. He's had over 5 interceptions within the last 2 years. So like he is really, really he's been the most impressive to me from the Sark camp,
Yeah.
especially the DBs, because he's played a game. I mean, if you think about the receivers that he's played against within the last couple of years, he's really, really done a very good job.
Yep.
And for some reason he just stands out to me. I mean, he's a solo tackling machine. I think last year he had like 42 solo tackles alone. 32 assisted tackles. So like this guy is not he's not he can get in the mix. And
Sure.
you don't want corners that are too scared to hit. And that's
Yeah.
what I like. I like thumpers. You could take this back to like defensive backs that actually hit people like Cam Chancellor and Champ Bailey. You had cornerbacks like that are not Peanut Tillman. They're not scared to hit you, and that is what Jade kind of reminds me of. He reminds me of those guys that are not afraid to hit. And when you got something like that, and he's got the speed on top of that. So when you have that, I think you have a really good defensive back, and I think he's going to make noise at the next level when he does decide that he wants to go on to the next level.
So I kind of gave you when we were previewing this in the pre-show, I gave you a name that I thought was kind of a cop-out name, but then I thought about it as you were talking, and I was like, wait, who was the one guy that we were like, get that dude off the field? Never want to see, because
I already know where you're going.
There is a guy on this, and we talked about it before the season started, that is on this roster right now that we're like, bro, I don't even want to see that guy on the sideline.
I already know where you're going.
Put that dude in the stands. Listen, and I got to give this guy credit, but then it's also a credit to the coaching staff for developing him. That's David Benda. This guy is a guy that we did not want to see. When you talk about guys that you hope that transferred,
right?
David Benda is one of those guys that we were like, please get him out of here. Like, the dude is not good. But credits to this coaching staff. Credit to him for buying in.
I remember
developing.
I remember last year when he would get on the field, you would get so pissed off. It
was terrible. He was so bad. Like, half the time, the dude didn't even know what the hell he was doing.
Nah, man, you had to give.
Bro, he was a junior last year. It's not like it was his first year playing college football. Like, that dude was
right,
and he was starting. Like, Tom Herman had this guy like he was like Brian Urlacher out there just starting.
Right.
But on a serious note, like, the dude has been a beast. Had a huge sack against Milton in that Alabama game.
Yeah,
was very distracted. The speed he had a tackle on Saturday, where just his speed and it goes to the speed of this linebacking core.
Right.
Unreal how fast that dude moves, and the guy is not a quitter. The guy does not give up on plays. So I think David Benda is somebody that's finally worth his praises. We were talking about, just a quick side note, we were talking about the Colts the other day. Whenever who did we beat? Oh yeah, the Ravens. The Ravens. So, and then one of the things we were talking about, because I don't think Michael Pittman Jr. is the number one receiver. Michael Pittman Jr. had that crazy catch.
Yeah, he had a hell of a snag.
So we had a segment on the show on Tuesday.
Okay.
That they were trying to force me to say that Michael Pittman Jr. I apologize to Michael Pittman Jr. I don't apologize to Michael Pittman Jr. He hasn't done anything. But David Benda, I'm sorry, man. You're awesome. That dude is great. David Benda has made the biggest turnaround in the season I've seen in a long time.
Right.
That dude's awesome. So anyway.
He's got some speed on him.
Yo, that dude is fast.
He's got some speed on him. And the reason why I mentioned that is because I can't remember if it was Alabama or if it was Wyoming. And it was just like it was like a sack. I want to say it was Alabama. And you just seen this white blur just kind of come across the screen. It was
that Alabama game, because remember, he fell, he slips.
Right.
And then he gets back up and goes and gets the quarterback.
Right.
He's only 6 foot 225.
Wow. Well,
he's
that's
built
crazy.
like a bowling ball. The dude rolls like a tennis ball. He runs like a tennis ball. Man,
he does.
That dude's crazy.
That's that pursuit, man. You got to have that pursuit when you're a linebacker, man.
I mean, and that's your job to do so. But,
right.
But anyway, that's just a quick little segment. As the season goes on, I'm curious to see if this changes. As other players out there, Barron Sorrells is definitely a guy I'm super high on. I liked Barron Sorrells last year. So there's some guys up there. Anyway, let's talk about the reason why we're here. Kansas, Texas, Saturday afternoon game. Going to be a little bit warmer.
Afternoon is going to be hot.
Going to be actually the hottest it'll be most of the day. And don't tell Kansas fans this. It's actually been kind of cool in Texas this week.
Listen. If it's 101 and under, we had a good time. Now, people forget and people don't know this. A lot of it, if you're watching from outside of the university, or I mean, outside of the state, not the university, but if you're watching outside the state, it was 105 on Saturday. It was 107 that Sunday. So if they would have played later, I remember when they started the game, that was one of the things is that they were talking about how hot it was on the field because that AstroTurf is going to hold that heat. I do hope that they make the transition back to natural grass.
I think CDC talked about this on.
I want to say I saw that being mentioned over the last couple of days here. Yeah. CDC again, Crystal Conte is actually really, really dope on Twitter. I enjoy following him because he doesn't shy away from the hard questions. Nope. We always get that one question that one year where people like, hey, can we get the black? Can we get the black on the burnt orange? Can we get the black on the burnt orange? No. And he's like, nah, we ain't getting that.
We're good. But I do think CDC said that the grass is coming in 2025.
Okay.
Next year they're trying to build the indoor facility. They're trying to finish building the indoor facility.
Okay, that's dope. That's dope. That's real dope.
Focus next year. I think 2025 is natural grass.
Right. Okay. That's really dope. Okay. So where was I at?
Something about the heat, the pellets and how
the heat. Yeah. The heat itself is just it was really, really, really crazy out there. It was like 6:30 or 7. It was like 103.
Yeah.
Like that. So it's still gonna be hot, guys. Like if you're going to the game, just make sure you get hydrated. Don't drink too much beer. Just to make sure you stay hydrated because it's going to be, even though the game is going to be in the afternoon, it's still going to be very, very hot. And especially those, I like the fact that they're playing Kansas this late or later in the afternoon at the peak of heat because those guys are not used to that.
They're not going to be ready.
They're not going to be
It doesn't get ready. It's cold in Kansas right now. Let's just be honest. It's probably like in the 50s right now.
Right. Absolutely. We're in the 80s at night.
It's going to be 94 kickoff time.
Okay.
So the field's definitely going to be in the hundreds.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I saw this is the first time Kansas has played Texas in this early in the season in like 10 years.
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah. I can definitely believe that.
They usually play like late November, late October, early November. This is the earliest they've played.
So usually what they consider Kansas is they consider Kansas Red October. Because remember back in the day, it used to be Nebraska, Kansas, Tech, OU, and sometimes Oklahoma State, depending on if Texas is playing Kansas this that year or not. It would change between those four or between those two. So yeah, the October was always a scary month. Red October was always a scary month. Yeah, that's a true throwback for you guys that are definitely lifelong Longhorn fans. But yeah, this is just it's weird to hear about Kansas. We, like you said, we normally don't hear about Kansas until like late October, early November. Thank God we don't have to go up there and play them in a November game because it will be snow everywhere.
That'd be crazy. So yeah, the last time we ever played Kansas, and actually this is the first and only time that Kansas and Texas play each other, and they're both ranked in the top 25.
Right.
Now, Kansas was ranked in the top 25 in 2007, I believe.
Right.
But they did not play Texas that year.
Right.
That was because that was back in the days, for those of you lifetime Longhorns that know, where we had divisions.
Yeah.
And Kansas is in the opposite division as Texas. And they play every other year. And then the year after they did that, they sucked again. So, we just never play. So the biggest, there's a couple of interesting things, and I think I'm going to go back to the offense there.
Okay.
Talk to me about the defensive backs for Kansas and the matchup with the wide receivers, because I think that's the most interesting matchup.
I would say their defensive backs are probably going to be the most. They're going to have the most experience. This is the most experienced defensive back team that Texas has played so far, right? You got juniors, you got a bunch of juniors, you got a bunch of seniors, scattered out through there. You've got they're safe. They have a safety. They have two safeties that are from the state of Texas. They've got a couple corners. So these guys have been. A lot of these guys have seen these guys before. You got a couple transfers coming in. So, and these corners are not necessarily small either.
Right.
These are big guys. I think the smallest corner they got is like 5'10". They average. I think their tallest corner is 6'2".
Yes.
So these are not small guys. Just so you guys know, the average corner is about 5'8", 5'10", maybe. They got some big boys. I'm talking the safeties is 6 foot, the free safeties is 6 foot. You got 6'2" corners, you got 5'11" corners, you got 6'1" corner. Like they have size. So it's gonna be really, really intriguing to see what these corners and what these wide receivers, because one thing we talked about with Sark is Sark always talked about having getting shifty guys that are able to get out and make plays out in the open. So it's going to be interesting to see these wide receivers get out here that are shifty and have speed against these bigger cornerbacks that are normally not necessarily, I think I forget what his name is. I forget his name, but he's like, we got a big corner. Des Bryant was talking about him a couple weeks ago at the Alabama game. He's like 6'2", 6'3". We just don't walk around having 6'3" corner. And that's definitely what Kansas has. They have it scattered out throughout the backfield. So that is definitely going to be one of the bigger matchups. Of course, we all know about like Jalen. We know what he's going to bring. He's going to be on the offensive side. He's going to be a scrambling quarterback. But Jalen is not necessarily the biggest quarterback either. So for me in the defense, continuing on with the defense, the best thing that you can do from a defensive lineman standpoint is to put your hands in the air, because he's not tall as a quarterback. Normal quarterbacks, we talk about your Peyton Mannings, your Lamar Jacksons, your Patrick Mahomes. These guys are like 6'2", 6'3". Peyton Manning's 6'5".
Yeah, Peyton Manning's huge.
Eli's 6'4". Yeah. Drew Bledsoe was like
5'10".
He was like 6'6". Like these massive.
Oh, Drew Bledsoe. Yeah.
Drew Bledsoe. I'm sorry, Drew Bledsoe.
I was thinking Drew Brees. I was like,
no. Drew Brees.
Drew
Brees and Jalen are the same size. So if they're 6 foot, your average lineman is going to be about 6'3", right? So now you got to worry about getting the ball in a certain lanes. Yep. So he can't really see. So from a defensive perspective, from a defensive line perspective, I remember my coach would always tell me, he'd be like, if you can't see him, put your hands up. Put your hands up. If you can't get the pressure now we know that defensive line is going to get the pressure.
Oh yeah, but that defensive line, but the defensive and the offensive line should eat, because Kansas is they're not big,
right?
And especially the offensive line, which we'll talk about. I want to touch on. They should maul the defensive line for Kansas. There's a video last week of Jalen Daniels having 10 seconds to throw the ball last week. That ain't happening this week. Jalen Daniels is not going to have no 10 seconds to throw no damn balls.
No, Kansas have a big offensive line. They do have a big offensive line. I think one of their starting tackles is like 6'7". But that creates an issue if you have these defensive linemen that are coming at you all different types of way. You have your offensive line potentially collapsing on you. They're going to get in the way. So again, the one thing that Jalen does have is he does have speed. He is fast,
and that's what creates challenges. Yeah, Kansas has a couple of guys that are 6'7", but they're both freshmen. Maybe one of them starts if possible. Calvin Clements. But yeah, they kind of like 6'3", 6'4",
Right.
couple 6'5" guys. So, I mean, they're decent. They're decent.
Right. So again, for me, that's that defensive matchup, that defensive backs versus that wide receiver matchup is going to be a thing. What I think, again, this might be another Jatavian Sanders game. Like
I was just about to say that.
you're who are you going to have cover? You're going to have a safety cover that guy. Your safety is smaller than Jatavian Sanders.
Right.
Your safety's light ass. So
Yeah.
it's what do you do from it?
Right. And then your linebackers can't cover them because they're not fast enough. So I think JT's gonna eat again. Like if you guys play Prize Picks and JT's, I don't think they posted the over unders.
Okay.
I play Jatavian Sanders all day on Saturday because I think he's gonna get.
All right.
I mean, this could be like a 7-8 catch game for him.
Yeah, I think
he's got speed, so
again,
he'll take some of those screens and he'll run them for 40, 50 yards.
One thing that I'm not gonna ever be surprised at is what Sark does in the first half. Sark's gonna give you something. He's gonna give you something nasty in the first half,
right.
And you may not be able to fend it off or figure out what's going on until halftime. Sure. So
and the state of this year's team, you hope that's enough, right? Because this has been a second half team for most of the season. So this year, if Sark can figure it out in the first half, now you're coming to a point where it's like, well, it's too late now because they're also a second half team.
Right.
So,
a complete ball game, man. That's all we want.
That is the difference between this team.
A consistency in playing 4 quarters. 4 quarters.
I think there's a quote that Anwar Richardson was talking about on his show yesterday that Sark gave when he first came to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he said like trust plus consistency equals something. I can't remember, something like that.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and find it, but we'll talk about it next week. But I thought it was very interesting. You see the way, and basically he's talking about how like, hey, coaches have to work with coaches, players have to work with players, coaches have to work with players, and everybody has to work together and trust together for this thing to work.
Absolutely.
And it'll take us some time to do that. This is something he said when he first got here. It'll take us some time to do that, but when we do that, it's gonna look freaking crazy. And I think we're at that point where it's looking freaking crazy.
Absolutely.
And I still don't think this Texas team has put their best foot forward yet. And I think that's that'll be next week.
Right.
Quinn Ewers, what do you think he does this week?
I think we get 3 touchdowns, 275.
I actually think we get closer to 250, 225. And probably like a couple touchdowns. I think it's going to be a big running game.
Here's the reason why I say 275. The reason why I say 275 is because what I've seen is that for some reason, and I could be tripping, but like for some reason, in order for Xavier and Quinn to get on like the same page, a screen pass has to be thrown. And I don't necessarily know what it is, but I don't know what it is that happens, but it's like after they complete a screen pass, they get go. Like, what is I don't know what that's about.
Maybe it's developing a rhythm in the game or just like kind of getting a feel for the game.
I don't necessarily know what it's about, but it's like until they get that screen pass together, then they start moving. So I'm going to assume that they're going to get the screen pass off very, very quickly.
Okay.
And then go from there.
Okay. Over under 2 that Quinn Ewers throws, completes 2 balls over 30 yards. Over under 2.
Over.
Okay. Any of those for a touchdown?
Yes. Okay. I think Jatavian gets a 30-yarder. I think he gets a 30-yarder.
In the air. On a ball.
I think he gets put on a rope.
Okay.
If there's any weakness within Kansas and Kansas's defense is going to be at linebacker.
Okay.
I'm not saying I watched them play last week, and it's not that they don't hit. It's just that it just seems like they take bad angles. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't necessarily look.
If they take bad angles, they are screwed.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're a bad team. But they just take really bad angles. And I'm like, you're playing against BYU. And let me say something. BYU
is tough.
Those kids, first off, those kids are like 4th and 5th year seniors, bro.
Yeah.
They ain't no scrubs. And they beat them by 9. Okay. BYU
they won by 9, right?
Playing at BYU is not easy. We know
especially at night. Ugh.
Right. You may get the dub, but you're gonna come out limping. You know what I'm saying? So like I watched them against BYU and I was just like, man, they got some opportunities to look pretty good defensive wise. That's what I was saying. Like if they get these long balls off, which I don't think they will, but if they are able to get these long balls off, then that could be an issue. Yeah. But I really have faith in the defensive line and the defensive backs in general. So
holding contain is going to be important, and because Jalen Daniels is going to try to break contain as much as possible. Right. Once he gets out of the pocket, man, it's the Wild West.
Yeah, so it's on from there.
It's crazy. So
right.
Give me a score prediction. How you feeling?
I'm gonna say Texas 35, Kansas 24.
Okay.
I think the reason why I say that is because I do think Jalen is going to be running. I do think there's going to be a lot of pressures. I think there's going to be a lot of blitzes, but that's also going to give Texas and the defensive backs an opportunity to come in and really take advantage, maybe jump some routes, get a couple of interceptions, maybe get a fumble, scoop and score. I think it may be tight, till the third quarter. And I think eventually that defensive line will wear that offensive line down. And then, you'll be able to see the true talent come through, and you'll be able to see the true scheming come through of that defense and that defensive line. And hopefully what I'm praying is that those defensive backs will take advantage of that. And those linebackers will take advantage of that.
That's fair enough. Yeah, a lot of people talk about Sauce Gardner, coming out of Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. People forgot about Kobe Bryant, who transferred to Kansas. Right. So here's my prediction. I think Quinn, who's been playing with fire on this for the last couple of weeks, throws the pick off the tip.
Right.
I think he throws his first pick. I don't think he throws a lot of picks this year. I think he only threw like 5 last year.
Right.
So I think he'll probably throw about the same 3 to 5.
Right.
There's just too much talent on this Texas team.
Yeah.
With that being said, they'll recover. They'll come back from it. I think Texas wins like 35-17.
Right.
I think this defensive line is just too good. I think they'll get a lot of pressure on Jalen.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about this game is Jalen he has never played a defense this good. The opposite side of that is Texas this season has not played a quarterback at the talent
level
that Jalen
Right.
So I'll take Texas 35, Kansas 17. We'll head to Red River to kick the shit out of them next week, and then we'll head into the bye week.
Next week's OU Hate Week. The one thing I'm hoping that Sark is doing is like saying, "Hey, look, don't overlook Kansas. They're undefeated. Yeah. Don't lay a fucking egg. This is not the time to lay an egg."
I'm glad that Kansas is not I'm glad Kansas is undefeated because then it doesn't give them the opportunity to overlook them. And I'm actually glad that they're undefeated, legitimately undefeated.
Right. Right. They've won in convincing fashion. Like I said, they did go into BYU. They did struggle a little bit versus BYU. But
they also did have the sick ass black
right. Also, what we also need to worry about is Devin Neal. Devin Neal is not a scrub either. He averages 5.4 yards a carry. He ran for 91 yards or something, like 94 yards last week.
Yeah. Devin Neal's good.
91 yards. He's not a scrub. Not a scrub.
But this defensive line only allows 2.6 yards per carry.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Again, a very interesting matchup. So there's just a lot of interesting things that happen this week. If Texas goes in and Texas hasn't played great at home this year.
Right.
They're two big wins were both on the road. So if they can come in, they can focus. I do think they can run away with this game. Now, The one thing to look at is if this game gets out of hand very early, very quickly, and if this gets like Oregon, Colorado ugly,
right?
I will be stoked heading into Oregon.
Absolutely.
So,
that's what we want, right? We want to see us
want.
get the rest. We want to see our young guys come in, get those reps so that they can get prepared, just in case if they have to step up at any point in the season. So
because you never know what happens in Dallas. It's always crazy. So
right.
Cool, man. Any final thoughts tonight before we head out of here?
No. This weekend is going. I thought last weekend was a great week of college football, but this weekend coming up is going to be nuts.
We've got obviously Kansas, Texas, Georgia, Auburn is happening this week.
Right.
Ole Miss, LSU, Duke, Notre Dame. Duke, Notre Dame is kind of the same stature of game that Texas, Kansas in, right? Duke is a basketball school going against Notre Dame that's a historically good football school. So kind of same thing.
Right.
Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi State, USC, Colorado. I mean, so it's another good – I don't think it's as action-packed as far as like you talk about like the matchups as far as like ranking.
So this is why I feel like it is, right? So I feel like a lot of these games are going to really start knocking people out of these playoff runs, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like let's take Georgia Auburn, right? Georgia Auburn. I know Georgia necessarily has not played the greatest people, so this will actually be probably the hardest team that they played. And I know South Carolina was help, gave them a run, but I think me personally at certain positions, Auburn is just absolutely better than South Carolina in certain positions. Now, South Carolina has a special wide receiver.
Yeah,
that kid is golden, right? But there are things that I think that Auburn, even in a down year, has better. Also, this is a rivalry game. I know South Carolina and Georgia is also a rivalry game, but this is like back-to-back rivalry games. It's hard to continue to get up for these rivalry games. So that's one thing to look at. I think Clemson takes another loss, and I think they lose to Syracuse this weekend. Syracuse ain't no scrub. I mean, there's very small hopes that Clemson could get in there, but I think it's pretty much over. I think Syracuse gets the dub over Clemson. You got Florida versus Kentucky.
Yep.
Rivalry game, another rivalry game. Again, Florida, what do they look like? Are they gonna screw the poo? Are they gonna not look? Are they gonna look past Kentucky in order to look to next week, where they have they have a smaller opponent in Vanderbilt, but I mean they could be overlooking that, and they could be looking at South Carolina and be like, we're gonna go and whoop South Carolina. So to me, it's just opportunities for multiple schools to either look over something and look at the next opponent, or they could easily get put away with a team like Clemson. So also A&M has a game this weekend. I know their opponent is not necessarily a juggernaut, but A&M ain't been looking too great. I mean, they just
lost their quarterback for the season too.
They just lost their quarterback. They just
because they don't have any doctors over there.
I don't know how they're pulling these athletes, but they just ripped a 5-star athlete right out of our hands.
I don't think that was ever close. I think Bussy has been for a while now, heavily towards A&M. I don't think that was ever close.
Okay, that's fair.
So, whatever. Hey, we're about to get Ryan Wingo, and we're about to get to Corian Morris. I don't really care.
Yeah, I was gonna say that we do have a recruit coming in this weekend, so we don't need to be. We need to look. We need to look good.
Yeah. So we have Decorian Moore in this week. I think no.
He's committed to LSU right
now. I believe so. Yeah.
Yep, he's committed to LSU.
There's a couple other guys coming in this week, I think, as well. Let's see, Texas. Decorian Moore for sure.
That's it. That's the only recruit we got right now.
I thought there
I
was
think Collins might be. Collins might be.
Oh no! Who's our big commit from this year? What's his name? The commit. He loves to be down here. I forget his name. Anyway, there's a huge 4 or 5 star guy that's already committed to Texas.
I want to say it's Collins.
Is it Colin Simmons?
Yeah, Colin Simmons is going to be here this weekend.
Okay, he's just always here because he just loves it. So yeah, so he'll be here this week. So hopefully there's some conversations that can happen there. Ryan Wingo is visiting Colorado.
Right.
Is that this week or next?
He already visited.
Okay, so I know he should.
Oh no, he might be visiting this week. They're playing USC at home. Yeah, my bad.
Okay, yeah, it could be this week. So, we'll start to see kind of the recruiting. I mean, we're getting into October. The first recruiting period is about mid-December.
Right.
So we're starting to see some of these recruiting pieces align. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, Tim, before we head out of here, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Twitter at Tim Wayne. Scrolling across that ticker there. You can also find me on Instagram. Twitter is more my main place. So feel free to hit me up. Talk all sports. So yeah, just hit me up, guys. If y'all want to talk some sports, have a good time. Maybe talk some trash.
Awesome. You can find me at the Uncle Gandhi on Twitter. Everything else, of course, follow us at Longhorn Fan Battle. We are trying. We're very passionate of trying to get to 300 followers by next week. So please tell everyone that you know. I would like to get there before Red River. I think that'd be a really cool accomplishment. And then, of course, you can find me on the Horseshoe Mob podcast on Tuesday nights, 8:30 Central, and then on Monday nights, you can find me on the ASC Southland Battle podcast. So, but anyway, my name is Harish. This is Tim. We are out. Peace.
Till Gabriel.
Go home, touchdown like the end zone.